Welcome to Evolvepreneur Podcast Channel. My very special guest today is Jarie, which is an engineer in training and an entrepreneur by nature. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you letting me on the show to talk about stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Cool. All right, so let's dig into your bio a little bit. You've been formed, or he says has been formed or has been part of 6 startups in various management roles. His latest company is a PR and marketing firm that helps small smart home, consumer home medical device companies, which is interesting because I actually did an interview with a medical device guy a couple of weeks ago, actually, to tell better stories. He's an author, and the latest book is Entrepreneur Ethos, and also a podcast of the same name. So very interesting. So let's tell me a little bit about how you got to where you got to be, because I mean we talked about this off air a little bit, and that was a pretty powerful story. So tell me how you got to be the PR guy when you start as an engineer, right? Because that's usually completely opposite ends of it.
Yeah, if you would have told me in college that, Jarie, one day you will be a PR maven and you will make your money telling stories, I would have laughed at you and said, that's insane. I'm an engineering nerd guy. I'm a hardcore hardware engineer, semiconductors. I've invented tons of things. I've got over 10 patents. I'm like hardcore, Look up geek nerd in the dictionary, see Jarie, right? But as all good stories, I met a girl actually. And she was in the PR and marketing game. She was actually a publicist for professional athletes. Met her, fell in love, got married. And then a little over a year after we got married, she got diagnosed with leukemia.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I remember the day. It was December 26th, day after Christmas.
My wife's birthday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. It's insane. I remember it like it was yesterday. And as we were going through her process of like, what are we going to do? I mean, as you can imagine, it's such a huge, crazy thing. She literally one day looked at me and said, buddy, you're going to need to take over the business. And I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm an engineer. But she's like, this is the only thing paying us. And if you're also going to be my full-time caregiver, the only way we're going to survive is you got to be a PR maven. So buddy, buck up, suck it up and get it done. Right. And so I started running her business the entire time she was sick. And then she ended up dying 4 years ago, actually, April 3rd, 2017. And I just continued to do the business. I don't know if it was just because I was good at it or, trying to remember her, but like the last 4 years, I've just been really helping tech startups tell better stories, and specifically startups in the Internet of Things, smart home, medical device arena, consumer medical device arena, because they have the hardest time telling stories about what they do, as you can imagine. So,
yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, I think we talk about the whole concept of accidental entrepreneurs. Like I think most entrepreneurs will tell you they got there by mistake, or something happened that they weren't expecting, they lost their job or something like that. I mean, I started in a bank, so I never thought I would be an entrepreneur when I was 15, 16, but somewhere along the line, it kind of, I think it gets you somehow. It must know that that you're open to it, because it is a certain breed of people you've got to be. But I think also, the world's changing. Like it to me, now is the best time ever to be able to start a business. Like once upon a time, you had to have a bricks and mortar building, you had to have marketing, you had all these things, staff, everything like that. Now you can virtually start a business tomorrow. It's like they say, like, be careful if you annoy a millennial, because he'll start a business up to you next week against you and probably beat you, right? So
yeah, it's true. It's so true.
So it's certainly a great time to do it, and I think it also is your own destiny too. Like you're controlling your own destiny. I think when you're employed by someone, you are bound to that job, and people say I'll do it on the side, I'll do it casually, but it never works. I've been down that road. You cannot do what we do without being committed to it fully, and almost you've got to burn your bridges, otherwise it won't work.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's a full-time, more than full-time gig, I guess, lifestyle. A lot of people talk about. it's one of those things where if you want to build an independent life that completes you, this is the gig for you. And the thing that's really fascinating is I've been doing this for 25 years. The last 5 of it's been in PR, but before that was all these tech startups, right? Hardware, software, and the like. And I learned pretty quickly that the corporate life was not for me. I just didn't like the bad corporate coffee and people, telling me what to do. Like I think in one sense, I'm just unemployable in that
I don't
way.
think I can get a job now. There've been times over the years where I think, I might get a job. Like I've had enough of this, not making enough money, whatever. I'll get another job. And then that lasts about 5 minutes. And then you realise no one's going to hire me. They'll drive them insane. You show them the door.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's true. I mean, once you find that out about yourself, which a lot of young folk, that are new to their career and they're trying to figure out their life. Once you really understand that, then it's very liberating and freeing. I think. I think it's something that's hard to do. It's a hard job or vocation, but it has a lot of freedom.
Yes.
And when it clicks, right? And I think part of the reason why I just get excited about it, I also get excited about teaching younger entrepreneurs sort of like, hey, these are all the mistakes I made. Go make your own mistakes, but don't try to make these.
Don't do those.
Please. Yeah, please make some new ones. Don't make the ones I made, And so I think, that's a really like powerful kind of force, like for you and I, like we just know and deep in our gut and in our heart, like, we're not going to be very productive and or happy if someone's telling us what to do. And what I mean by telling us what to do is not like a customer or whatever. Of course, like I have to listen to my clients and customers.
Well, the problem is usually what in things you think you're the boss, right? But what you do is a bunch of little bosses. Like you just instead of you get rid of one boss and you get another 300 individual bosses.
Exactly.
They're worse than your one boss, I've got to say.
It definitely can be. But I think the thing that's interesting about it is it's like it's a different relationship. I mean, that's the thing.
You can fire them. You can fire them. Which I have done.
Or I mean, they can fire you, obviously, but you have a little more control and autonomy over who you select, who you work with, which I think is really important. And the power dynamic in the politics is just not as strong. I mean, when I was doing my corporate gigs, the thing I just didn't like about it was the politics. In general, I think that, 25, 30% of your time at a big company is totally wasted on politics.
Yes. No work gets done at work.
Yeah, none, right? And no, it doesn't.
You're going to go home to do it.
Right.
People say, take work home. Why? Because no work gets done at work.
Yeah, you're on these things called meetings, like what? Why do we need a meeting to discuss this thing we could have discussed over email? But there's people that their job is to just be in meetings, that's just not me. So got the bug early on, and now what I'm doing is something that's pretty it's fulfilling. It's different than I've ever done before, but I'm really starting to kind of come into my own with it. And that's, I think, the exciting part is, as entrepreneurs, we can evolve what we do. And if you're just really curious and have an inclination to learn, and you're very like open to learning and trying new things, the opportunities are endless, I think.
I think too, if you can put your ego aside, all right, and accept criticism, but you don't have to take it, right? You don't have to actually do anything with it. But I think copping it on the chin, sometimes people say stuff and you think, you are right. I don't really want to hear that, but you are right. But I'm not going to do it anyway. But at least that there's an awareness of it, I think. And I think being aware of what's going on around you, and that whole concept of understanding that you've got control, much more control than you would have in normal circumstances. And understanding, like, I got an interview when I lost my business the first time, it was ripped away from me because of the taxes changes in Australia, and basically there was a huge drop off in revenues, like 90% overnight. So my business just got decimated. And so I thought, I'm going to start up I'm going to go somewhere else, because it was a tourist town, and tourism was also going badly. So I thought, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to move somewhere else. And I got a job for, get out of this, then move to Sydney. And one of the questions that was asked of me was, and I did this 4-hour interview with this guy, this Jewish man from South Africa. And he asked me this question. He said, I noticed you've fired some clients over the years. Like, they were selling accounting software, so every customer is valuable to them, obviously. And I said, yes, I did. I said, because they're unsuitable, they're unprofitable, they're unsuitable. I fired them. In fact, a couple I've actually gave money back and made them sign a piece of paper and never contact me ever again, just to make sure.
Wow.
And because they just pissed me off so much that I just couldn't cope with it, right? Like, unprofitable customers, I'm really quick to fire them now. Like, I had one the other day. If they won't follow instruction and do what they're told, when it's important to them, you are fired, because I can't deal with you. It's too hard, right? You just put yourself in the too hard basket. And he says to me, like, why you can't do that? I go, yes, you can. It's your business, my business. And he said, would you do it again in our business? I said, yes, definitely I would. And so did this 4-hour interview, and the guy that got me to the interview stage after 100 applicants said to me was, if you don't screw up, he didn't say the exact words, but something similar, if you don't screw this interview up, you'll get the job. Well, 4 hours in, I reckon I screwed the interview up. I did not want to hear this. He did not want to hear the fact that I would take a decision and do it. And I thought, listen, if you're not willing to make that decision in your business, you're not willing to make any decisions, to be honest with you. Like, that's not the hardest decision you'll ever make. And so I didn't get the job. So I went back to Cairns and I sat there for a week, and I got another phone call, and the guy says, we've changed our minds. And I go,
really?
Okay. Because I found out later the other guy wanted more money than me.
Oh, there you go.
Right, so it's any reason. Anyway, so put that ego right out the front door. But basically also he wanted to do e-commerce, and e-commerce wasn't in anywhere. This is like 20 odd years ago now. He wasn't even on the height, like e-commerce wasn't going to take off, right? It was never going to happen. And so back then it was never going to happen. So that's another reason they didn't hire him. So I got the job on that basis, that, on my own terms, because I said, look, I'll fully prepared to fire people. And in the end, they had me firing staff. Like, the whole idea behind their plan to revitalise this business was losing $30,000 a month, was to start firing people.
Wow.
Right? I'd have this interview with this guy that came supposed to help, and he'd go, I want to, I had to think about it. I think, the best strategy is we need to get rid of some people. So I had 13 staff or something. Wow. And he said, I think we should get rid of half of them. And I go, okay. All right.
Man, welcome to the company. Wow.
I got to follow the company line, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. And so he says, and so a couple of months goes by, and then he comes back again. He goes, you know what I think? I think I've had a good think about it. I think we should fire some people. And I thought to myself, this guy's only strategy is to fire people. It'll be just me pretty soon. Right?
Yeah, I know. And then maybe you're next.
I probably am. And so I basically decided to fire myself. So I just said to him, look, I'll tell you what, can I just take it off your hands? What if you don't want this business, right? You've been here 15 years. You obviously want to get out of Australia. Can I just take it off your hands and you just walk away? And so they agreed to that on September 11.
Oh, wow.
The September 11. I thought the world had changed. And we took it over, and we took it from the 19th largest software distributor in the world to the second largest in the world over the next 3 years. Because of their strategies I told them to do. Wow. They wouldn't do it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's almost like I became an entrepreneur again on the back of that. I was lucky because I could see after 6 months there I wasn't going to last. I didn't want to be the person who shut this business down, because a lot of my friends, the resellers and all that sort of stuff, they knew them well.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be the guy.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling to have to let people go.
But then I started my own business, and I think over the next 5 years, I think I fired 80 people over those times. I fired 80 people because we used to hire young kids.
Yeah.
And some just did not work out, even though we had a very interesting hiring system. None of them didn't work out. So I had this knack of firing people without them realising they got fired. So they'd walk out the door and go, What happened? I just got fired. Did I just get fired? Right? You can see the bewilderment on their face.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but the good news is, like, I firmly believe that, you can handle firings in a nice way where it's like, look, it's just not working out, and they're going to be better off. I mean, I had a boss, it was a great guy, and he would always say, and during the interview process, he's like, my job's to make sure you don't come here. And everyone's like, what do you mean by that? And he's just like, I'm going to tell you the challenges and struggles because I'm going to be completely honest with you. So don't take the job here. And people were just so like taken aback. You're like, well, you're not really selling this very hard. He's like, well, this is it, and funny thing is that he had a lot of loyalty within his group, and he was a great guy. So,
well, I think the day you hired is the day you're fired.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Well, I also think that really, if you have to let someone go, it's generally like a management problem because you hired him in the first place. Therefore, at some. Well,
we had a rule. We had a rule in our business. I had 2 other girls managers, and I said, if you hired them, you fired them.
Yeah.
So, so basically that was the rule. So if you hired badly, you get to fire them as well. But one time there, I was so sick one day. I was just so sick. I had to come and fire this programmer, and we also had to fire the receptionist because the receptionist, she was horrible. She was just terrible, and she smelt of nothing else. She smelt bad. Like it was. That's a story in itself. But
exactly.
So basically, it's like I can't come and do it. I cannot. I'm too sick. And so I said to Flo, I said, look, can you fire him? I'll fire yours. So we swapped.
There you go.
And it was quite funny because I said to her, do you think you're going to get any better with training? And she said, no, I don't think so.
Wow. Well, at least she's honest.
She was honest. I said, well, she's like, yes, I know what's going to happen next.
Yeah. It's just not working out.
The younger kids are very honest. That's, even my son, like you can say things and they're just honest as, right? They will tell you straight up what it is, and you think I think that's the break of politics in offices where you told people what they wanted to hear. That younger generation has the habit of just telling you what they think. It may not be right, but they tell you what they think. It's like
there's a certain amount of refreshing honesty that way as well. I mean, like you said, sometimes you don't want to hear it, but I think as entrepreneurs, our ability to synthesize the truth and like seek the truth and make sure we understand things, because the job's so hard that politics, it gets in the way. Like you need to know what you need to know because things move so quick. And if someone's not telling you the truth, the whole truth, they're not like, you're not understanding something because you're in the bubble. Like a lot of times in corporate, the boss is in the bubble. Like everyone lies to the boss. Like if you think you know the truth, one, you're deluding yourself. And then the other thing is if you're the boss at a big company, you have no control anyway. They're just going to do whatever they want to do anyway. Your job's to sort of push them forward and coax them into doing what you want them to do. And I think as entrepreneurs, we have that same kind of, challenge and struggle at times, but really, we need to seek the truth, because if we don't seek the truth and understand the real situations, things go so quick that we're going to fall off the rails. And
exactly. A big company, big corporate company, $1 billion company, they can afford a few screw ups along the way.
Oh yeah.
But you can't. As an entrepreneur, one screw up could be the end of you. One little tiny mistake and that could be the end of you without knowing what you're getting into. I think that's a dangerous place to go if somebody's starting to lie to you, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's just so fascinating because, as I help tech startups, tell their story better, I always am it's just so fascinating because a lot of times they're super technical. Like anyone that's ever built anything, like they just, this is such the best thing in the world, right? But a lot of times they don't know how to explain it to like lay people. And the thing that I find is that a lot of times they think, well, we don't want to dumb this down. And I'm like, I don't think you're dumbing it down if you just explain it in a way that your grandmother can understand, right?
Or a 12-year-old.
Or 12, exactly. Well, equivalent, right? Like really it's important because if you can't explain it in simple language that's easy to understand, that your message comes across, clear, concise, and compelling, it's never going to grow. Because the thing
story, right? No one else can actually repeat the story.
I'm glad you brought that up. Right. Your whole job is to make a story that someone can repeat. So if you can't do that, then you won't grow, because one of the best ways to grow any business is through word of mouth, right? Like, you got to go talk to these guys.
Look at Elon Musk. They just spend no money on marketing. Nothing.
Yeah, I know. Zero. Amazing.
Cool. Richest man in the world, basically now. No money on marketing.
Oh,
I
yeah.
wonder, right?
Well, but I mean, he's a unique individual as
Yes.
well.
Are you really
But
prepared to do that? That's the question, right?
yeah. But I think we can learn a lot from him, and I think we can learn a lot from a lot of other companies like Zoom and Slack and all of these other companies that grow mostly organically through word of mouth and what are called in the startup trade product driven growth. So they just make customers love them. And it's a big thing going on right now. And I think the reason it's a big thing going on right now is because everyone's figured out all the hacks for growth. If like we were talking about social media before we hit record, and you and I both have sort of the same opinion of it. I'm not really a fan of it.
Yes.
But right. Because like you can't have a conversation with your customers. You can't like interact with groups of people. I mean, it's hard because they control the message. They control what you see.
Yeah.
And, all the people that are doing ads and on, Facebook, Instagram, Google, whatever, every 6 months, the new hack gets arbitraged out. So then what are you left with? Yeah. Okay. You got to learn the next hack.
The basics.
Exactly. You got to have the basics. What's the fundamentals? And that's sort of what I help my clients do is fundamentals of storytelling. We've been telling each other stories for thousands upon thousands of years. I mean, you and I sitting here, I'm in San Francisco, you're in Australia, we're over Zoom.
And you got told by a story to come to me because I think
exactly with through Jan, right? We were talking about that.
I haven't done her interview yet. So.
Yeah, exactly. And what's great is that the reason why we're here, you and I, from totally different backgrounds, is because our ancestors told the best story.
Yes,
that's why.
Well, there's an interesting book that I read called, I think it's A Brief History of the World or something. I think it's actually called something else than that, but Homo sapiens and stuff. And it's an interesting thing in that book. It said humans' ability to gossip is the reason why they got into communities, because what they would do is they'd gossip about a town, like you should go to New York, it's really good for this, or you should, all those sort of things where they gossiped, was because that was the only way you could communicate back in those days. How did a mass of people become a community of people without gossip? And if that gossip was good or bad, that's brought down nations, right? Gossip brought down nations.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we've been telling, like I said, stories around the campfire to make sure we don't get eaten by saber-toothed tigers. And, we know what to eat, right? And so I think it's a real powerful thing, this idea of, well, fundamentally, like you said, which I'm glad you brought up, the fundamentals of any business are transcend whether it's a startup or a big company or whatever. The fundamentals are the fundamentals. And I think as entrepreneurs, we really need to kind of go back to fundamentals and basics and build brands and businesses and products that people want to buy, but more importantly, that people want to talk about and share with their friends and, say, hey, you got to go listen to, John's podcast. You got to listen to Jarie's podcast. You go we want that word of mouth because really that's kind of the only thing we can, I wouldn't say control, but influence, right? Like it's, again, this stuff's going to be arbitraged out.
And I think the danger here, and you probably, I was talking about getting very clear, like clear on your why, get clear on your story, is that I think most entrepreneurs are so busy, they think they have to be busy all the time. All right, so they never stop and say, look, I'm just going to take a day out to think. Right, they don't do it. And I find the only time I used to be able to do that is when I had to travel. So I got stuck in a plane with no internet and you had no choice but to think, right? And by the time you got to the other end of that flight, you had a million ideas. I used to take a notepad and pen with me, and by the time I got to the end of that flight, I had a million good ideas that I normally wouldn't get because I'm tied up in the business and I start believing my own BS. I think when you start believing your own BS, you got in big trouble and you forget and you don't spend any time thinking. And I think that's the bit that I would imagine you probably spend time with clients. It's like, you need to spend some time thinking about this.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's such an astute point because a lot of times what I see is people are so busy building that they're not understanding what they're strategy, or in the military terms, what their grand strategy is. And I find it fascinating because, I'll come in, not know anything about their product, learn a lot about it, and then have this different perspective. And I think the part of the reason why I'm so successful at it is because exactly what you said. I block out time in my day to think, to go for a walk, to write. I write a lot, right? Because I write books. Write, synthesize, like think of the world in a different way. And I found that that's just been well worth it in so many levels, because a lot of times, entrepreneurs are too busy to do stuff. Well, really what you're working on that important, like there's some things that are, it's busy work.
Minor in the minor details, right? You like minor details, and you end up in a situation where it's almost like fiddling while Rome burns, and it infuriates me sometimes when I look at it and think you're worried about this, and the reality is you've got this big problem over here you're basically avoiding because you don't want to address it.
Exactly.
The reality is there's a bigger problem than that. And I think if you've got to work in the business, then you've just bought yourself a job. Your job as founder is to come up with a vision, right? You've got to come up with that. No one else will do it. You can't hire that out in some respects. Nope. I think you've got to come up with it yourself. Someone can help you, but at the end of the day, you're the person who has to live and breathe it. You're the one who has to actually say it. Yeah,
and you have to believe it, and it's in your head. And if it's locked in your head, no one else is going to know what it is. And I think that's the other thing that's hard for a lot of younger entrepreneurs, especially technical ones that have the technical prowess to build whatever, like software or whatever.
Yep.
They're like, oh, if they build it, they will come. And that may have been the case back when we were coming up in maybe the 90s, when you had 14 slides in your PowerPoint deck, and here's a $1 million, $2 million A round, but not anymore. I mean, I think the hardest part now is the marketing and the sales. I think the ideas, while important, I've seen a lot of crappy products have a better story and they just win. So it's really the better story wins, the better marketing, the better, how you're going to get this out in the world so people can use. So I think it's shifting a lot, and that's both exciting and a little scary, because a lot of that is not what the normal skill set for someone building a product. Like, how do you get in the Wall Street Journal as an example? Like, you just can't, you can follow a process, but it's not as guaranteed as I can write 10,000 lines of code and ship a product.
Yeah, and it's probably easy to hide, right? So I think that's part of the problem.
That's true too.
Because I think that younger generation too, ain't big on the communication route. Like, they'll avoid it at all costs. Whereas, they don't see that as important. That two-way communication isn't as important as it used to be to them. And I think that how they're going to manage in the future. I don't know if they won't talk to each other. I don't know what happened there, but now that you bring that up, that's actually a really good point. I don't know how that interaction is going to go, because, you and I came up in the time where there was no internet, right? I mean, my first internet was a bulletin board system with a dial-up, 300 baud modem, right? That'd be me.
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't turn it off forgot to turn it off because it cost you a fortune.
Yeah. You actually had to pay for a phone call and long distance charges. Remember that? And so the thing is that, we came up in a different time where the internet was not ubiquitous. And I think when communication is ubiquitous and you don't have to actually try very hard to communicate, you lose the ability to communicate. And you can see this with, you look at the next generation coming up, Gen Z coming up, like one completely mobile enabled, internet enabled.
I need a computer. They don't use a computer. They don't even have one.
Yeah. Or always on their phone or whatever. But more importantly, like their communication style is totally different. I mean, how often will they actually pick the phone up, and talk to someone on the phone, Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little weird about it, but
no, I agree with you there. I mean, my son's like that to a degree. Like he will have phone conversations and stuff. And I mean, I got a good reason for liking the phone, because I spent 7 years in the front line in a bank serving people. and then I spent another 5 years doing tech support in my business. So as far as I'm concerned, I hate the phone. Unless you want to ring me for a damn good reason, I'm not picking it up.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I'm with you.
Good reason for not liking the phone, but that I don't, right? And I think that's the danger, is that, as you say, like if they don't pick the phone up, because the biggest problem in business I find is that at some point when you've got a customer that's that angry, you have to talk to them.
Yeah.
You cannot not do it any other way. And I guarantee that if you talk to them, the reason why we went from number 19 in the world to number 2 in the world is we attacked all the customer complaints. We had this pile, like a whole, 2 reams high paper of customer complaints. I put on a customer complaint officer who was a sales guy, and we made $1 million that year on complaints. Wow. And so the reason why was because we picked the phone up and we spoke to these people and we fronted them. Like, you got to show some courage, right? We fronted them and said, hey, I know that you hate us. Can we get you back, right? I know that you... And they go, well, no, I don't really hate you. I'm just frustrated because no one will talk to me. And I go, okay, well, there isn't nobody will talk to you. It's because you need to have a support contract. So if you pay for a support contract, we'll help you. We'll talk to you. Okay, how much is that? Well, that's $1,500. Okay, no worries, per year. Okay, cool. Thank you. Where do I sign?
Wow, that's slick.
It is. And the guy made a fortune in commissions, and we turned it into nearly $2.5 million reoccurring business in 3 years.
Wow.
And those guys said to me when I took the business over, did you lie to us? Did you know there's something there that wasn't? I said, no, because it was in my actual business plan I gave you that you never read.
Yeah, no, true. I mean, oh, wow, that's really interesting, because a lot of the companies that I help, the ones that I've seen that are really successful have a really rock star customer service program, and people that just, their whole job is to make, them successful. And one of the things that you mentioned about getting up on the phone, I remember I was working with this one company, and, he had a really good customer service team, and they'd have email and text, and they'd call. And then occasionally, like, customer would leave, like, oh, I hate this, you guys suck, whatever. He'd be like, the CEO would call him and say, well, I'm really sorry about this. How can we, I'm the CEO, what's going on? And I would say 90% of them came back, or he gave it the thing for free. But it was amazing because he got so much goodwill. And not only that, which is the other thing I think to remember, is not only the goodwill, but he got great feedback to what you said about solving all those problems. It was gold. Absolute gold. And he would just, every once in a while, he'd call a customer.
I noticed that this is 20 odd years later, some of those customers are still paying.
Yeah.
That we converted back then on the days that were going to leave us.
Yeah.
25 years on, some of these guys are still paying.
Yeah.
And so you bought a huge amount of loyalty. I remember in the early days when I got a phone call from this guy that rings up and says, and we sell a payroll system or whatever at the time too, and he's ripping into me. And I'm going, okay, so I'm not telling you I can solve the problem, but tell me what you want, and I'll see what I can do. What's going to make you happy?
Right.
And he goes, hang on a minute. I go, what? And you can hear him talking in the background. He's talking to his wife, because his wife had set him up to call up. He didn't actually know why he was calling. He had just told him, get on the damn phone and complain.
I love it.
And I'll go and hear this chatter. What do we want? And he comes back and says, well, we just really don't want to have to pay for next month because we don't think it's fair because it wasn't working. And go, yeah, okay, then no problem.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, okay then. I'll see you later then, bye. And it's like, sometimes people want stuff. That's the crazy thing about complaints we found out was what they actually want to solve their problem. So that thing, I don't know whether I can solve your problem or not, but tell me what you really want and I'll see what I can do. Basically, that whole script, which we used to play over and over again, works like dam busters, because what happens then is they go, actually, they don't know what they want. They just want to complain. Or they've got to actually tell you. And so and what that comes out of this is rarely anything big. Like, I want you to buy me a Lamborghini. No.
Yeah, never.
A refund, or they want somebody to solve their problem. Their actual requirement for what they want is so small that you can actually say, well, I'll tell you what we'll also do is we'll give you 2 months off. I think at the time I said to the guy, look, I'll tell you, I'll give you 3 months off. Don't pay for 3 months.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's powerful. You're right. Because it's like, if you think about it, they're expecting, and some people do this really poorly, but some companies, but if they're expecting like a fight for it, and you're just like, well, what's your concern? How can I help you? Like, how can we resolve this? Or like your line, how can I may not be able to help you, but I'll try. Automatically the goodwill is there. And I think for entrepreneurs, this is lost. A lot of people lose the fact that it's not just tilting up a website, putting in a way to pay, and having your SaaS company, blah, 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 whatever, right? You really have to, like, people are paying you money for a service or a product.
Yep.
And you should really understand what their challenges are and concerns. And then with this company that I was just mentioning, it just improved the product by orders of magnitude. Because there were some things you just can't, when it comes to a high-tech product, when it comes to a startup, you put something out in the world, usually, your first product, you're like, yeah, it's got bugs, it's got challenges and struggles. You'll never know what to fix until it's in the actual hands of customers, right? That's, I think, the other thing that's so valuable when you have that feedback loop. Like you said,
doing too much, I think trying to make something that's complete before you even get to the point where people actually their hands on it. Actually, an interesting story. On the weekend, I decided to rent a movie on iTunes, and when I tried to play it, I couldn't play it for whatever reason. I thought it was an internet problem on my side. Turned out it wasn't. I just could not play the movie. So I went to Amazon and got it. Anyway, so I got the receipt from Apple, and it reported a problem. And I just reported a problem. It didn't give the opportunity to say why. It just says report a problem. Anyway, this morning I get up and it's been refunded.
Yeah.
No questions asked. Like, they didn't even say, why did you can't? Because they obviously could probably tell that I didn't play it because I couldn't play it. And I think they also knew there was problems with the system, obviously, that because I Googled it and there was some issues with iTunes. So they just refunded, no questions asked. Next time you're I guess, trust in the system in that if you rent something, there won't be a problem, or you buy something, then you're going to buy again because you got that confidence that the first time you got positively rewarded in that process. And I think that's the bit that with the customer complaints in the process, if you're positively rewarded when you've got a problem, I think that's when the relationship sours, when you've got a problem and some people can't deal with them. They don't deal with it.
Yeah. Or especially with startups, they're new and people are nervous about giving a startup money. And it could be any business, just depending on what it is. But the fact that it's resolved quickly and to the benefit of the customer. So, hey, we'll just give you back your money. Just here you go.
Sometimes like no questions back, right? Sometimes they say, I don't want a refund, I actually want you to do it.
Yeah, or whatever, right? But I mean, but that confidence, that confidence that you're going to be taken care of is I think fundamentally probably one of the best business practices you can do, because again, as we mentioned before, I think the ultimate in promotion and storytelling is when someone recommends your product or service or company to someone else, because that's the strongest recommendation, the strongest bond. No ad, no Facebook ad, no social media, I don't know, likes or however many billion Twitter followers you have.
Yeah.
It's minuscule compared to, hey, you know what? John's a good guy. You should go on his podcast, or John's a good guy. You should, buy his book or whatever. That's the ultimate.
Exactly. One of the interesting thing was talking about gossip and, people telling each other stuff, right? A couple of weeks ago, I had a bit of a run-in with LinkedIn. They decided to terminate my account. And I've got 26,000 people in my LinkedIn. They just
terminate your account.
Terminate my account. We've warned you before, and you're now turning you off. That's it. And I go, Oh, okay. Now, if this had been Facebook, I would have been doomed because Facebook's got no support. But luckily, LinkedIn does. So I emailed back and say, are you serious? Are you seriously? Can you also tell me why you're shutting me down? Yeah. And so they sent me back a template and they forgot to change the template. So it says insert reason here. Seriously.
I love it.
Oh my God. So anyway, I go back and say, I'm still not getting clear about why you're trying to do it. And so it went backwards and forwards. And I'm not sure whether Tyler is a real person there or not, but Tyler's very busy because he's replied to every single email I sent him. And in the end, I think what happened was they got so confused about why they banned me and why they turned me off. I got back this next email after a couple going backwards and forwards because it was still unclear about why they were trying to turn me off.
Yeah.
And just between that, before I got to the point, so, I resigned myself to the fact that I wasn't going to have LinkedIn anymore. But I do have a backup LinkedIn login, so I logged in and realised something that I already knew. That was after 15 years of being on LinkedIn, I was disappeared. Every single post, every single thing that I've ever done was now gone. Right? So all that so-called marketing or everything you had is now gone. And also all the messages and everything that I was currently talking with were all gone as well. So I was just simply wiped away in 15 years of work. A day later, I get this email back and I tell you what, we've decided to reinstate your account. And the reason why and please do not do this again. And I go, and then it goes down to explain why. Apparently and I never did this by the way, they accept I was promoting face masks and protection equipment. That's against their community standards. However, there's nothing in their community standards about this, by the way, because they pointed me to a URL that actually doesn't talk about it at all. So they decided I was promoting masks and stuff. And down the bottom it says, insert sample content here in the template. I was like, okay, you forgot to change the template again, dude. Tyler, you're not doing well here, bud. But you put me back on. So I didn't want to dispute the problem that I never done.
Yeah. You're like,
thank you very much, and I'll log back in again. And that was just a reinforcement of the fact that social media stories exist because people can communicate them. But if you're going to rely on your social media, you could just disappear tomorrow, and every single thing you've ever done will be turned off.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, and you'll never get it back, and all that goodwill. I mean, I think, it's so. Yeah, when I advise startups, I mean, of course, you have to be on social media to show signs of life.
Yes,
but
Elon Musk took his Facebook off. He got so annoyed with him. I don't know if you read the story about that one.
Who's this?
Elon Musk took his Tesla off.
Oh,
because apparently Elon agreed to launch this satellite for Facebook. Then they were going to put the satellite over Africa so more Africans can have internet or something. Mm-hmm. It was a free launch and never paid for it. And unfortunately, that rocket blew up, along with Mark's satellite. And so Mark wasn't too happy. So Mark made some disparaging comments on Facebook about being disappointed. Musk, in his typical fashion, came along and go, dude, you probably were insured, weren't you? So what's the big deal? You didn't pay for it anyway. Right? And then apparently they escalated. So there's a bit of nastiness going on. So in the end, Elon Musk took all his SpaceX and Tesla off Facebook, so he does not have any Facebook accounts. So he gives him the willies.
Yeah.
Basically, he has Twitter, and that's it. So it was a very interesting kind of thing that, even you guys, they don't have to have it, but if you don't have it, you have to have a damn good plan, right?
I would agree, yeah.
Right? That's one thing to take yourself off social media, but if you don't have a good plan, then you've just broken one of your legs for the spider breaking one of your legs, right?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, that's just so interesting. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I try to have a kind of an omni-media strategy just for myself as well as clients. And I found with entrepreneurs, that makes a lot of sense because there's also so many social media platforms. It's like, well, which ones do you pick? If I do all of them or none of them, and so I'm always
say get good at one and then move to the other, but I don't know whether, I don't think there's an easy answer there, but
no, there's not.
But on the subject of storytelling, can you give me a couple of tips on what they should be doing in terms of telling a better story? Like, I think a lot of people, as you say, get bound up in the features and the benefit, even the benefits of a product that actually don't really matter to the person who's buying it, because they may have not even spoken to even understand why they bought it half the time. I'll sometimes ask, what the hell story? What they say about you in the room when you're not there? That's what you want to know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. I mean, stories, since we've been telling them for so long and they're sort of baked in our DNA, they have structure. So all stories have structure. All stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end, like by definition. They just have to. And your story as a brand or a company also has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. But it also has to evoke emotion and take people on a journey. It just can't be a list of features. This is why, better, faster, cheaper. For some brands, maybe if it's a commodity, it's like, okay, I'm going to buy flour. What is it? Is it organic or whatever? Minor kind of differences. But for a lot of times, people don't understand why they built something, why are they in business, and it's not to make money. It's like, why are they want to change the world with their business? Why do they think that the status quo is going to change for their silly thing that they think is the best thing ever? So a lot of times there's not a lot of emotion in a company's story or in a brand. And I'm not saying that you have to be all mushy and, whatever, but you have to drive people emotionally first and then back it up with facts or logic, and as well as credibility. And a lot of people
emotion and justify it with logic, right?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. I think Joe Sugarman said that. I mean, a lot of the sales guys say that, and it's true. It's 100% true, because we are emotional creatures. We're driven by, how we react. There's some things we can't control. And not that you're going to manipulate people, but you want your brand, your company, your startup to evoke an emotion that's going to push people down the path to actually ask, oh, tell me more about this. I want to learn more. You want to give them the opportunity. You don't want to bombard them with stuff. You want to give them the opportunity to dig in. And you actually do that as not only a part of courtesy, because, hey, I'm not going to waste your time. If you're not into what I'm doing, totally cool, move on. But you want to evoke that emotion really quickly. And you also want to have more than just, what does this thing do? Like, what's the big idea behind what you're doing? Why does it matter? And I think that's an important piece that a lot of people, it's not that they don't know, they just sometimes can't articulate it, especially if you're technical. Because you're like, oh, I'm solving this problem with this piece of software, and it's got this feature and that feature. And why wouldn't you want to do it this way? And you're like, yeah, but like, talk to a customer, or a customer will ask you what you do, and you'll rattle off for 5 minutes on some technical thing, and their eyes will glaze over. Yeah, right. And they'll be like, I don't know. And then they get confused, and then you wonder why they don't want to talk to you ever again.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, for storytelling, it's about being authentic. It's about invoking emotion. It's about really honing in on a story that can be repeated. It's like a meme. Think of it as a meme. If what you do can be a meme, then you're ahead of the game, because then when you tell someone, they can tell someone, then they can tell someone, then they can tell someone, then they can tell someone. That's the main goal. And the simpler you can make it, the more repeatable it is. So.
Actually, I always used to do, when I back in the selling accounting software, which was quite bizarre, because I was sort of like what I call probably a startup marketing person, even though I was selling accounting software, I think. And one of the questions I used to ask was, what's the benefit of your product, right? And we say, what's the benefit of the benefit of the benefit? And as soon as you drilled into that, they got more and more desperate as it got deeper. So it's almost like, it's to save you money. I said, well, no one cares about saving money. What's the benefit of that? Well, you get to spend more time at home. Oh, okay, so what's the benefit of that? And you keep moving through until you get to a point where I can't give any more. And then then you've got it. And I think that's the thing, is if you keep asking yourself, what's the benefit of the benefit of the benefit, or the benefit, until you get to the point where you go, it's actually so they can spend more time with their children. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. That's in the manufacturing world, that's called the 5 whys of problem solving. It's this very similar thing where you get down to the root of it. And I think as you brought up, if you're a company entrepreneur and you want to really make a story that resonates, what's the benefit to the benefit to the benefit is a great way to go, because then you get down to the root cause. You get at the emotional appeal. You get at the intangible thing. Of course, everyone wants to save money. Okay, but is it really about that? Or is it about...
You can't grow saving money.
You can't. Well, that's the other thing. I think that's also a great point. When you took over the business you were just talking about, the old owner was just like, well, we're just going to fire people. And you're like, you never grow by cutting costs. You grow by customers and innovation.
Losing all that knowledge and all that relationships that those people had with those customers was absolutely crazy. That's why, to cut the end, stop the bleed, I'm going, you can't keep firing people here.
Yeah, because it's not going to work. Because that's not a growth strategy. That's not a growth mindset.
Second meeting, I knew that's where we were going. So that's when I thought, I thought this guy might be here to help me. That's the way it was presented, but it wasn't that way. He was sent in to be toe cutter. And so basically he was just doing that. So the third meeting was, you're fired. I could see where that was coming from. I was third, last man standing here because they needed someone to sign the checks. That's all that would happen there.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, there's a pattern here.
Yeah,
I should probably do something about it.
But I engineered myself because we all got made redundant, right? So early on I made the deal. I said, look, I think to be generous in this situation when you really need to give them 2 months worth of pay, not just one. So I set up with another partner in the business, right? So he came in with me as well. And so when we both got fired, essentially, because we had to in the end to shut the business down, he said, well, the precedent is everybody got 2 months' salary. So we need it as well. So we actually got a kickstart income money from them, twice as much money, because I thought of it as, I'm going to have to make sure I get out of this thing one way or the other. I either have 2 months to find another job. So right from the get-go, I thought, no, I need to make sure that I could see the writing on the wall. I had suspected. I thought, well, I better make sure. So they, being South Africans, and they weren't familiar with Australian laws, I said, that's being generous. You give them 2 months' pay. It feels like they're not going to be upset with you. If you give them 1 month's pay, it's hard.
Yeah.
So we made them give them 2 months' pay. And so we actually had some money to invest in the business when we started up again, but it was quite scary times. But I think you're right about the story and the technical side of it. I mean, I was with our software, one of the things that I realised way back in the early days when I sold 350 accounting systems in 5 years and implemented myself. So there was a massive undertaking. And what I realised was the more I demoed the program, the worse it got. So I'd go in and start demonstrating accounting software, and I had a friend who used to do this. He used to do it for 3 hours. I think in the end they probably gave in to him because they just wanted to get him out there to sign the check. Stop talking about it. Yeah, so what I found was the less I got to a point where I could demonstrate accounting software without demonstrating it. So I'd ask a bunch of questions and then come back with a proposal, speak them through a couple of the screens, and then when the first time they ever saw the software was when it arrived. Because I realised people don't want to see the product. They want the benefit of the product. They want to see what it does for them before they want to know any idiosyncrasies about the product at all. Yeah. And my sales success rate went from about 40% to 90%.
Interesting. Well, I think that also gets down to telling a better story.
Absolutely. Around involving them in the story, right, as well.
Oh, exactly. That's actually a really good point about storytelling, where you're bringing the client, the customer, the prospect on a journey. They happen to be the hero in the story.
Yes.
You're not the hero. No. You are helping the hero. You're Sam to Frodo.
Sidekick.
You're the sidekick, right? No, honestly.
Sidekick.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And so the journey of the hero, classic Joseph Campbell stuff, right, is there's a quest to go on, and the hero has to go on the quest to save his community or whatever. And he goes off on this grand quest to do whatever. And when demoing software without demoing it, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you've built what you said you're going to build.
I always fired it up and opened the screen up. That's about as far as I ever got.
but I mean, like in that respect, right? Really, what you were doing, which you figured out and probably didn't know it at the time.
Oh yeah.
Right. You are bringing in the customer as the hero. You are putting your company and their story together. So you are building this hybrid story where you are actually having some empathy and you're taking them through the journey to solve their problem, which that's why people buy stuff, right? To solve a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Consultative sales, it's called, apparently. I found out later. Because I didn't know what I was doing, right? I sort of knew what I was doing because I spent like over $100,000 on marketing advice and all that sort of stuff in times of actually went through and, pre-Google days even, we used to buy material. So I kind of knew. It took me a long time to figure it out, though, and I think it didn't take me to my third business to actually figure it out. Exactly. Understand it to the point where, that was really obvious back then, but it wasn't obvious to me. It worked, so I just kept doing it, fortunately, because that's another thing that small businesses or entrepreneurs is when it works, they stop doing it.
Yeah. It's so... there's so many moving parts in a business that something, all these little things could go wrong and you just won't even know it until it's too late sometimes.
Exactly.
That's what I think.
And changing things, too many things. Like I found that a lot
Yeah.
of times it's just a small tweak. Like when you look at these really big companies, one of the things that is good and bad with them is they're very slow moving beasts. So if they've got something that's not right, then they will take a long time to change it. Whereas with an entrepreneur, you can change it tomorrow, which is also a downside in my opinion, because you could change it and mess it up. So the reality is you've got this little tiny problem that you think by completely changing the entire product is going to solve the problem, and all you just said is a rock for your own back, because now you've got to reinvent this product again, when the reality was you just had to change its color or something. All right?
Yeah. Incremental change. Yeah. Incremental change is either, I don't know if it's misunderstood or if people don't think how powerful it is, because you can do these little, I mean, I always like to think of them as thought experiments or experiments with things. Like even in storytelling, you can experiment with stories. Like you can.
Yeah, I do all the time. I test a story out on someone to see if they'll actually.
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, what do you think about this, right? But
they start yawning. I know I've got a bad story.
Oh, I lost them. They're nodding off. Okay, stop. Okay, change it back up. I gotta okay, no more midget. No, anyway. But yeah, I think it's important to realize, especially, I mean, entrepreneurs, especially tech entrepreneurs that are trying to get their product out, they will think that, oh, this grand sweeping gesture will solve all my problems. And turns out that's not the case. I mean, there is the whole mantra of move fast and break things, which to a certain degree I actually adhere to, but I don't think you have to do the grand gestures and the grand, this, we got to change everything up, right? We have to really be conscious of it. And I think you're right. A lot of times the grand plan or the super feature or whatever just never solves a problem. I mean, I always love it when big companies reorganize, right?
Yeah.
They're like, we're just one reorg away from perfection.
Exactly right. Yeah, absolutely. It's really funny because when you think about, I think I know I read this, but in Japan, when obviously they sent an American over to solve Japan's problems after the war, one of the things they did with Toyota was they went into the American market, and when they went into the American market with Toyota, all the current manufacturers said, look, they're not going to last. They'll go broke in a year. They won't last. We'll drive them out. But they'd gone in with a 50-year plan of making losses for 50 years. They didn't expect to make any money for a long, long time. So all the competitors were thinking we'll drive them out. So cutting prices and cutting their own throats, because Toyota didn't care whether they cut their own prices. All they did is cut their own profits. So they cut themselves out in the end. And at the same time, they had a long-term strategy of building that brand over that 50-year period, because the whole thing with that guy that Kaizen, what they call it, is that slow improvements. And I think that's where I've sort of seen in my business, that I'd say to most people, is new small incremental improvements over time make a massive difference. Because, like we're talking about the guesting process that I put you through, that's had many innovations in time. That's taken probably a year to get right. But we slowly, as soon as some guest says to me, I didn't quite understand what you said there, or I forgot to ask a question, I add it to the list. I'm slowly improving it. I'm not going, let's toss the whole thing out, it's not working, because they were upset with this question. Let's slowly improve it. And I think that's the thing that most entrepreneurs don't do. They build something and then they move on to something else that's shiny, and they forget that they've got to keep it improving on that thing.
Yeah. I think it's a process orientation versus a goal orientation. I tend to be more process driven, because I think if you have a good process, that the results will come. And we had talked a little bit about your onboarding to be on the show. Like there's a lot of forms and things. and I kind of snuck in underneath, it's like I broke his process a little bit.
Commitment, right? If you're willing to fill out a form, you might show up to the show as well.
Yeah. That's true too. That's true too. No, I mean, I like we were talking about a little earlier, I like to always process, because process can always be improved, and process over time will give you consistent results, as opposed to, I have this goal, I have this number in mind. And, again, I get it, with your business, you got to make money, fine. But if you have a process orientation, I mean, this is what the E-Myth was all about in one sense. If you have a process orientation, then you just keep on improving your process. And if it's repeatable over time, you will make the goals you want to make. So it's always process over results, or opportunity versus outcome. Opportunity being building the engine, the process, the methodology, so that when opportunity does come, you can take advantage of it, as opposed to, we want this kind of results. Because I always love it when, like, big companies, I love bashing on big companies, when big companies, beat their profits by a penny.
Mm-hmm.
Like every quarter they beat it by a penny. And I'm like, I think you're gaming it.
Yeah, well, my guys, when they're selling accounting software, their idea was 30% annual growth was increase the prices by 30%.
Yeah.
And then Sage turned around and decided that they wanted to see new customers. And it's like, no, there isn't many of them. And so that completely destroyed the entire gaming system, because they couldn't game it anymore, because they had to show up with a new customer, as opposed to just mucking with the prices, right? So sometimes you can sack half your customers and double your prices, which I've done several times, and the stress level goes down dramatically, and at the end of the day, your actual workload goes down dramatically as well, and you get rid of a lot of the pains and the bums as well on the way through.
Well, that's true too.
Quite a cleansing process.
Yeah, and no, that's a good point as well. I mean, chasing a bad opportunity, especially startups, like, gosh, they just want their first customer. Like, they'll make a deal, they make a bad deal. Like, and I've done this, so I'm fully guilty of this. I've made bad deals. I still
do it. Sometimes I go, I thought better. Oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, we're human. We're like, we have this whole ego thing that we want to be accepted. You know what I mean, right? But again, like this process thing, if you have a process for that and you can recognize it, and then you can either say, okay, I don't want to do it, or I think the more important thing is, I am doing this and this is what I expect, as opposed to I expect something different. And I think as a startup founder, as you're going through this, especially when it comes to the sales part's always the hardest part.
Yes.
Absolutely 100%. I have so much respect for salespeople, because it is a really tough job.
Yes.
And I can't stress enough that if you're a startup person, entrepreneur, you have to learn how to sell.
Yes.
And I am not a fan of it at all. I'm learning the hard way, but yes. I have a huge amount of respect for salespeople. And that's part of that process, that, building a process to make that happen. So.
Well, one of the reasons why we actually managed to get to number 2 was because we had a bunch of accountants working for us as resellers. Accountants are the worst salesmen ever, by the way, because not only the fact that they deal 18 months in the past, they're actually in the past. They're historians, really.
Yeah, exactly.
They also, like there's almost no personality. Sometimes nothing about most accountants. Most accountants deal with numbers every day, and it's not very exciting. So they're not usually very exciting people. And so we had to convince them to sell. And they go, no, the client will buy from me if they want. I said, no, it's not going to work that way. So we did a course and we said, we have to convince you, and this is one thing I find with entrepreneurs, is they actually have a bad opinion of salespeople.
Exactly.
And we asked this question at the start, says, what's your opinion of salespeople? And 90% of the room would come back with all these horrible things about salespeople. And about 10% of them would always come with something nice, but most of them were like, scum of the earth, sales. I said, do you realise you've just explained yourself? Because you're the only person in the business that sells. You've just explained yourself. If you've got that opinion of yourself as a salesman, how the hell are you ever going to sell anything?
Yeah.
So we'd actually do the test again after that.
Yeah.
100% of the market would come back and, salespeople are nice people, right? Lovely people, they help people. And it's like, so now you've got a better opinion of yourself. Maybe you can actually do what a salesperson does.
Exactly.
Right? So act like a salesperson. Don't look like a founder who doesn't like sales, but he has to do it, but he doesn't like it, because guess what? The customer picks that up straight away, right?
Oh yeah. And I think the other thing is when you break the mindset, like what you just did. So there's the old mindset of, slimy used car salesman, bigger, better deal, whatever. Like, Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross kind of guys, right? Like Alec Baldwin and that, whatever, right? But when you kind of move it around towards, I'm helping someone solve a problem, which is the way I try to go about it, because this is the only way I can get myself to do it.
Yeah.
The
comes out in you, right?
It's like, problems. Yeah, I can solve as many problems as you want. It's actually liberating, And the thing that I think, as someone who creates something, in order to scale it, so if you're going to want to scale it, you have to be the first salesperson to understand what you're selling, what it is, what people want, so that you can actually then go train salespeople to do it. And a lot of startups make this mistake. They get some initial traction and they think, oh, I don't have to worry about the sales. I'll just hire some sales associates to do it. But then you're like, they don't know what to do. Like,
you don't have your story. I think the biggest thing is that I've noticed, don't tell the story, right? So I've actually done some bit of work on it just recently about this kind of concept, is like, get your story right, make your sales process work well, then train people to run your sales process. Don't expect that salesperson to come along and save you, because they won't. 100%. They'll probably make a mess of it, or they'll get a bunch of the wrong customers for you, and you'll end up saying, that salesperson just gives me horrible customers. I'm going to fire him.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you on that. I think that's something I actually just learned in the last couple of years. And it was a profoundly hard thing to learn. And also I had to eat a lot of humble pie on that, because it's like, I'm supposed to be the storyteller guy, and I hate doing the sales thing, but then if I can't really hire anyone to do it, right?
Yeah.
Can't hire anyone to do it because I can't train them how to do it. And you're right. Get your story straight first, get some success, be of service. I think this is a great way. Solve their problem, be collaborative. And then once you've got the process, then I think you can, again, end the story straight.
And sell then. See, I think the biggest problem is most people try and come in too early. So unless you build that rapport with that person and they really want your help and solve your problem, there's no point even trying to present a solution if they don't actually want it, right? Yeah. And they don't like you, right? Because unfortunately, it's interesting for me because I do consulting work. What I found was that I actually have this scenario where they have to call me. So when they do when they book a Zoom meeting, they have to call me. I don't call them, which Zoom is really great because you have to log in now. Like, we used to have to ring me on the phone, right? So if they didn't ring me on the phone, I wouldn't ring them. I said, you have to ring me. So simply by doing that process of them contacting you, means that you're now in a situation where you're the person helping, you're not chasing. Mentally, straight off the get-go, they're actually thinking about you solving their problem. Yeah. The second part of it was, were they following procedure? Did they book a call properly? Can they book a call on my calendar? Some people can't. They're instantly dismissed. Because you can't book a call on my calendar now. What are you going to be like when you're a client? So you need to prove to me that you're going to be a good client. Will you book the call? Will you show up to the call? Congratulations, you've just scored yourself a mark. You just showed up. Now, can you be a good client? Can you follow instructions? Can you do stuff? If you can't, then I'm not dealing with you, because you're going to cost me money.
Oh, interesting.
And I just got a client the other day that did exactly this. I said, you need to go on and do this. And they go, oh, can we do it a different way? And I go, yes, I'm doing this a different way, but you just got yourself fired. So he doesn't know it yet, but they're fired. It's just a time now. The day they were hired, the day they got fired. Well, the reality is that they're actually already fired. We're just going through the motions now, and they'll be told they're getting fired soon. But until we finish the job that we actually said we were going to do. But apart from that, they're going to get fired after that, or moved on to someone else that can help them, because I cannot be your workaround guy. I'm sorry. If you're going to work around everything, that means you're going to work around everything I ever give you. So your whole mindset is wrong. So you got to fix your mindset, or find someone who will follow your crazy mindset of just jumping all over the place and getting nothing achieved.
Interesting. I didn't think of it that way. Like qualifying your own customer.
Yeah.
Like, do I want this person as a customer?
And that's a great way to go as a salesperson, because you're not saying, I'm desperate for the sale. I'm qualifying this person as whether I even want to do business with them. So it's a reversal.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Well, let's try harder.
Well, but I mean, and I think it's also a better fit, right? Because see, now that you say that, there's some clients I have that, they don't want to follow my process or what I've been doing successfully for the last 5 years. And, I never thought of it this way, like what you just said, because I generally am pretty flexible, and I'm going to do my process anyway, because I know it works. Yep. And their interaction is going to tell me how serious they are.
Mm.
And I think that is the thing I've been picking up on. It's like, oh, you're not really taking this serious because you're not doing the things I'm telling you to do.
And the reason why they're not successful is because of that.
Yeah, exactly. All things being equal, right. It's like, that's such a, yeah, it's interesting. I never thought of it that way. I like that. I like that approach. It sounds a bit arrogant at first, but then you're like, well, I mean, we have to.
But it is.
but I'm not, but not in the way that I would originally think of it, right? I think it's more of, do I have like, there's a great saying someone came up with, which was a founder market fit.
Yes.
Like if you're building a company, okay, great, you can do that, but are you a fit for the market? And it could be, you know, customer founder fit or customer company fit. Like, are we really compatible? And as entrepreneurs struggling at times to get business and literally almost taking anything that's the quote unquote almost feels like scraps to a certain
smoking a mirror, we used to call it. If they smoked a mirror, you could take them as a customer.
Yeah, you're like, oh, you're alive, right? Oh, this is great. I mean, I think you start to really realize over time that you really want that customer company fit. I mean, they have to fit together or it will be a disaster. And I remember there's a guy I know who had this great saying.
Banks do it all the time, right? Banks do it all. Right? They train you. Banks do it all the time. They train you to be a good customer, don't they?
Oh, do they? Interesting. I have to think about that. I have to think about it because I had a friend who he would say when it came to negotiating price, he'd say, I have two prices, free or full. There's no negotiation.
Yep.
Because the reason is like, if we negotiate, this is not going to work out. And he's like, if I will do it for free, if I believe in it and it's small or whatever. So he's like, there's two prices, free or full price. And he's pretty rigid on that. And over time, he's gotten me to think in this way and not because I'm, like that's just what happens if someone can't afford it. Well, then they're not right for me. I think I was doing a little bit of what
a great way, another option to do that's what I've done in the past is that I say, what bits do you want me to take off? Do you want me not to call you after 2 days, like leave it for 2 days before I call you? Do you want me to cut this bit out of here and not do this? And which piece don't you want? And they go, I want all of it. I said, well, unless you want me to start carving bits off here, how are you going to get a discount? Right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Recipe.
I like that. It's hard to do.
It is hard to do. Price is the biggest problem, and I find that sometimes I've got the theory that if anybody ever asks you the price, don't tell them. So I've had conversations where I've had Zoom calls, and they get to the end of the call and they hang up, and they never ask the price. And I go, well, you can't be that interested if you didn't ask the price, right? So solves me the hassle of doing a quote, obviously, because you're not going to ask the price. And it's very interesting because the thing is that it's taking that process, and I think you're talking about that there's a process to sales. There's also steps to sales like anything else. And I think what people try and do is they try and jump ahead too fast.
Yeah.
You've got to take those steps, right?
Yes. That's a good point. That's a very good point. That's my problem. I so don't like it. I want it over.
So the way I used to do is I talk to them. I don't have to offer any suggestions on how to solve the problem. I just have a chat, ask some questions, come back with a proposal, and close it or not. And then I don't follow them up. So I say to them, like, I haven't got time to follow you up. I'm going to move on to somebody else now because of other calls. So you let me know. On you. Your tag, you're it.
Tag, you're it. I like that.
Right?
Tag,
and they then take responsibility to let you know, whereas opposed to, I'm going to chase you endlessly until you give in. All right, which is what the sales guy that doesn't know what they're doing, the bad sales guys that people think that they are, which are bad sales guys, is they think if they just keep following you up for no good reason, eventually you're going to buy from you. It doesn't really work that way. Well, some people will buy, but you're really just begging now. You're actually on the begging bowl, and you're actually begging to do business.
Yeah. It takes a lot of confidence to do that. I think
it does.
When you first start out and you're younger, it's harder. I mean, even now.
That's a system, right? I think having a sales system, like scripting what you say and following a system and not thinking about it too much, I think is a much better way to go than go, with no pants on. Right. So basically, you just go in there and just do whatever.
Yeah.
I think having that system, which I used to have my own scripts when I was starting in business, when I was selling accounting software before these people I took over from selling their software, I had a script. And I followed my own script. And then when I took a sales guy on, I gave him the script, I gave him the paperwork, said, go do this is what you do. And away it went. And so he was very successful. He decided to hire another salesperson because he wanted to leave me, and he gave the scripts and didn't train him properly, I don't think, but the guy's communication skills were horrible, and it let him down because you can't be a great salesman without great communication.
That's true. You have to tell good stories.
It's got to come full loop. And because we're having so much fun, we're actually going well over time here. So
yeah, this has been great. I really appreciate your time.
So
thank you.
Let's talk about you a little bit. So you've got a website, JSPYR, so JSYPR, I guess, .com. There you go. I just realised what I was doing there. And so basically, they obviously get there to have more of a conversation with you. What sort of people are you kind of looking for, having gone through all this process of the sales optimization? What sort of clients would you love to have?
Yes. Well, so I specialize in startups, tech startups that do hardware and software. So if you're an Internet of Things, smart home, consumer medical device company, and you're looking to grow through storytelling, or you're sort of in that, you've raised some money, you've gone to, you've got product market fit and you're trying to go to market, that's where I excel. I kind of get people through what's called the trough of sorrow or the Valley of Disillusionment, where they can't quite get the story straight to make it go viral. That's sort of my sweet spot. So,
gotcha.
So yeah, if there's anyone out there listening, it'd be wonderful to connect with me, jsypr.com, or you can take a listen to the entrepreneurethos.com, which is the podcast.
Or read your book. We'll put all the links up on our podcast.
Appreciate that so much. That'd be great.
So I really enjoyed speaking with you, and as I said, we probably could have gone for hours on this one, but we have to cut it eventually.
Yeah, we could.
So Jarie, really happy to have a talk to you today, and maybe we'll talk again soon.
Let's hope so. And thank you so much for all the great advice. I learned so much about sales. I have to go try some of this stuff now. So thank you for that as well.
Cool. No worries. My pleasure.